The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 12 of We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are a show that celebrates women stepping into their power and living their most authentic lives. We are also thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering moms and creating a community of mothers mentoring other moms to greatness. So we would love to have you in all the places. Please join us. It's a lot of fun. As I said, this is the opener of season 12. We haven't recorded a full episode in quite some time, so bear with us, everyone. Before I say too much more, let me say hello to Tova, and I'm going to have her remind you all of some of the fun stuff we have going on over here at We Go Boldly. How are you, Tova?
I am good. I'm excited to be here. It has been a really long time since we have recorded a episode.
Yeah.
I hope we remember what we're doing.
I'm not sure I do. I keep going like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do this? And I've changed up our opener on you. So
I
have fun with
know,
that.
which that's exciting. I'm excited to talk about what we're doing because you and I just yesterday were talking about how important. So jumping into what we're doing, and then we can get back to how we're doing. One of the things that we love that we do is our women's circle. And you and I were just talking yesterday about how important our women's circle is to us, how important women's circles that we have been part of over the years, how important they have been to us. And it is not a understatement to say that they have been life altering and life changing. And the conversation started, and this kind of goes right into this idea about how you tell your own story, but we'll get to that in a minute. But the conversation started when we talked about like when people put things in their newsletters, like how accurate are they,
Yeah.
and how much are they just like overhyping
Right.
what they've done or what they're doing. And so we were like, well, what would we say about our women's circle if we were encouraging people to join our women's circle? And then we are like, well, we could say that it is our favorite hour of our week. And we've moved it around a bunch. And I thought that I wouldn't like it on Wednesday afternoon, but I love it on Wednesday afternoon. And what it made
Right.
me realize was it doesn't matter when it is. I like it whenever it is. And it really is one of the favorite parts of my week. And having a women's circle, having that touchstone where we come together and we support each other. And whether it's a time where we're setting intentions for the month, or maybe we're holding each other accountable, or maybe we're just showing each other support and just showing up for each other. And sometimes we try to have a agenda, seems like too official of a word, but like an agenda on it. But sometimes we just realize that that's not the place, the day for an agenda, and we need to just talk whatever's out with one of us who needs to be talking about it. But it is such an important place for us to share and grow and thrive alongside each other. And that is not hyperbole. And we could put that in a newsletter. And so we would love to have you all go to our website, and it's www.goboldlyinitiative.com/weekly circle, and check it out and join our women's We Go Boldly weekly women's circle, because we would love to have you join us.
Yeah, it's super fun. And I think, I'm going to dive into our topic for the season now, but it also plays into everything you were just talking about, Tova. And that is like when you have a group of other human beings that you feel calm, confident, connected, all those good C words together with, it really helps you get through the hard times and also celebrate the good times, which we forget to do, right? Like we
Yeah.
sometimes we're like, oh yeah, everything's hard and it's tough and I don't know if I'm gonna get through it or not. Which you are, and we always do, right? But it's nice to have a place where you can sort of, pat yourself on the back and have other people reciprocate, right? And those things are, I think, super helpful when you're doing what we're talking about this season, which is learning to write your own story and live your own story, not just imagine it or like wish it to be or think about what could have been, all of those things that we all do. We're talking all season long. First, just Tova and I will be talking, and then we're going to bring you some really fantastic, amazing guests that I
Hmm.
cannot wait to introduce you guys to. And we're going to talk about self-authorship and what it means to be the pilot of your ship. So like there's going to be so many nautical references in this season. But
Yes,
bear with us because we love a nautical reference.
we
But
do.
yeah, but it's all about what what life are you living? Are you the one in charge? Where do you want it to go? And how are you going to write it? Like what are you going to do to make your life the life you want to be having?
Well, and I also want to highlight something both that happens a lot in the women's circle, and I think that we will realize happens a lot when we're going through the season, which is, and also highlight something that you're experiencing, I think, as at this exact moment, which is often that sometimes our struggles and our celebrations are the exact same thing.
Yeah,
It happens a lot in the women's circle because we end our group each week with sharing something that we are struggling with that week and something that we are celebrating.
right.
And oftentimes the thing that we are struggling with is maybe we're celebrating the fact that we are finally dealing with that issue, or maybe that we're struggling with the fact that we are surviving through that issue or whatever it might be. And I'm because I know that you are not particularly comfortable right now, and
No, I'm very
you
uncomfortable.
are very uncomfortable, and you will be uncomfortable for the next 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And it is probably going to be, despite the fact that you've already had physical therapy today, the hardest thing you're doing today. Um,
Yeah.
it is also going to be the thing that you're like, hey, we recorded a podcast today. Like
Right.
we did it. It is going to be your celebration. And I think that for a lot of people, we forget or we don't realize, or it gets lost in the shuffle that oftentimes our struggles and our celebrations are the same thing. We often feel like we have to put something in one box or the other, and they don't fit in those boxes.
Yeah.
I said to you before this started, because I could tell you were picking up on my weird vibes, that I was just in a mood. And I wanted to make sure you knew that it had nothing to do with you, that it was previous things. But I had a phone call last night and it left me feeling a little relieved. I had happy tears, but also really sad and I think hurt. I just like so many emotions and all at the same time. And it's, just so confusing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's like, well, that's life.
Right.
Fantastic.
Right.
Right? And as you and I are navigating parenting older kids, young teens, tweens, I think one of the hardest parts of that, one of the many hard parts of that, is watching them learn that life isn't black and white.
Mm,
And and there's magic in, I mean, the magic lives in the fact that it's not black and white, right? Like
right.
that's where the magic is.
That's where the fun and interesting parts are, right? In that
Yeah,
middle
but
ground.
that's also where the
Hurt
hard the hard
and
part is.
and disappointment and all of those delightful feelings come in. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we are excited about this season because so often when we have had guests on, we have loved listening to them tell their stories and talk about when they have taken ownership of their lives. And sometimes it hasn't changed their trajectory, but it has changed their contentment or their happiness. And what I mean it when I say it hasn't changed their trajectory from the outside, the boat is still, if we're keeping with the nautical theme, which we will
Yeah,
be for months in front of us,
absolutely.
the boat is charting the same course. Nothing from the outside looks like it's changed, but they have changed and they feel different. And so that makes a big difference. That genuinely makes a big difference. And I'm excited to have these guests on who have stayed in touch with who they are so they can continue to evaluate, like, hey, this doesn't feel right. It's time to make sure that I'm living the life that I want to be living. And the great thing is there is no point where you're too old to make that happen. Like, you can write your own story at any point. You can say, like,
Yeah.
hey, this is where I'm making a left turn.
Right. Well, you can rewrite your story at any point, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you change what happened in the past. It doesn't mean you can be like, in a time machine and go back and make different choices or make people act differently or any of those things. But you can learn to accept certain things. You can learn to grow beyond them. You can learn to look at them with different perspective. You can learn to have more compassion for yourself and others, all of those fun things. You can do all of that. And change your story at any point and then change it again and again. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing that um I don't know, maybe it's just generational, but like growing up that wasn't really something that was out there as a conversation of like, well, you're going to pick your career and then you're going to do your career and that's who you are. And now I think we talk more about, well, one, you aren't your career. And
Yeah.
two, you can open and close doors at any time, right? Like you may have two bad choices, but you still have choices.
Yeah.
And you may have two great choices and you pick one. But I think it's important to recognize that you are in charge of your own story and you have the ability to decide at any point in time that you don't like the story you've been writing, and you can change it. Let's talk a little bit about some definitions and like what it is specifically that we're going to be talking about all season long. I know I think a lot of people probably understand the concept of, being the main character in your story and being the protagonist, being the person in charge of writing all of it. But there is science, as we love, behind all of this. There is something called self-authorship, which refers to the process of developing the ability to define one's own beliefs, values, and identity, essentially becoming the author of one's life story rather than passively accepting external expectations or norms. That is the most important part of that sentence to me. It's that, when we decide or realize or accept that we are the authors of our own story, we can turn off that outside noise. It's hard, I think, for most of us. And there will be times where make missteps or it still slips in or you don't realize it. Um, but you don't have to accept somebody else's story of who you are or who you're going to be. That's not a requirement. And so once you recognize that, it becomes like louder and louder and louder in your head, I think, or your body or wherever you feel those things. Um, when something comes along that isn't right, that isn't
Yeah.
your idea, that isn't your values, and it becomes harder to ignore that dissonance. So I think that's kind of the baseline we're talking about this season is, are you, self-authoring your life? Are you the person making, defining your beliefs, values, and identity? Are you the person who's setting the expectations, or is it coming from somewhere else? And if it is, do you accept those or not, right? Like how do you feel about that? So that's the baseline of where we're starting these conversations. And I'm excited, like you said, Tova, to see where it goes with some of our guests because I think I learn best by doing, but also by hearing other people's experiences and seeing myself in those experiences, even if it's like the most tiny part of the experience. I mean, it could be like, oh, wow, we've lived very similar lives, but it could just be that one moment where I see an alignment and I learn something and I can make a change in my own life that helps me to be the person I want to be. So I'm excited for these conversations. I think they're going to be great.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you briefly mentioned learning sort of how you not just accept, but I think choose how you, I don't know if interpret's the right word, but process your past as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there are times when we've had guests on and they've talked about their past and they've processed things that maybe I've shared a similar experience with them in a totally different way than I processed it. And it was like, oh, I didn't know that was an option.
Right.
Like I didn't know just being like, processing it the way they did was even a choice that I could have. And then you realize that okay, something happened. And, as lawyers, we've been through criminal law and criminal procedure, and we know that how one person interprets an event is so different than how somebody else interprets it. But in your head, the facts are the facts of a
Right.
memory. But how you choose to interpret what that means for you, that is a choice. Like you can't necessarily change the facts of what happened, but you can choose to decide what it means to you and
Yeah.
what it represents in your life. And that is something that you can change 30, 40, 70 years later.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal to know that you have that power. And I think listening to other people tell their stories can be such a big force when it comes to learning that. It's one of the reasons I love reading books, right? Because you're really reading other people's stories. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited to learn and listen to how people share their experiences.
Yeah, same. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we can talk about some of the key aspects of self-authorship and what main character energy is and all of those fun things. So we will be right back after this break, everyone. Well, hello there, ladies. Are you ready to elevate your life and connect with like-minded souls? Join us every week at the Go Boldly Together weekly women's circle, where strength meets sisterhood. Dive into empowering discussions, share your victories, and navigate challenges together. Our circle is a safe space for growth and inspiration. Experience the power of collective wisdom and unleash your full potential. Don't miss out on the transformative energy. Click the link in our show notes or visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/women's weekly group to learn more about our Go Boldly Circle today. Together, let's embrace the journey of personal development and let's celebrate that unstoppable force within each of us. Okay, so welcome back to the show. Before the break, I promised that we would talk about some of the key aspects of what self-authorship is and how sort of we attain it. I don't like that word, like it's something you can go to the store and buy, but it is the word that's coming to my mind. So that's what we're going to use. So key aspects of self-authorship are internal reflection, actively analyzing and interpreting experiences to form personal beliefs and values, critical thinking, huge component, right? Like it's something I think because Tova, you and I are in the midst of raising preteens, teens, all of the sort of older, like mid-range aged children. This concept is coming into play all the time of like, are you thinking critically about that decision? Are you thinking critically about what your teacher is teaching you, about what your friends are saying to you, what they're doing
Mhm.
around you? All of those things really come into play. And it's interesting, I think, looking back as an adult now and watching my kids go through this, even my 8-year-old going through some of this, is fascinating in that it triggers me to think critically too. Like, how am I taking what people are saying to me, or how am I relating to
Right.
people around me? And so it's a reciprocal kind of experience. And I'm actually like I'm actually enjoying it, even though in the moment I'm wildly frustrated.
Yes,
And
because sometimes they say, "Are you thinking at all?" Was there
Oh
any,
yeah.
forget critical thinking. Was
No.
there any thinking?
The saying that keeps happening around here, which I shouldn't share because it's shameful, is are you thinking it through to the end? Like, did you
Yeah.
think it through to the end? And then usually the answer is no, and we move on. Um, but then the last aspect I think that's really important to talk about is a sense of agency. So that sense that you're empowered to be the person in charge, right? You're responsible for yourself. And that one can be really hard because we're so conditioned to think that other people can make us feel things or make us do things. Or, I mean, people can make you do things with threats, but like,
Yeah.
really, you can't, like, your feelings are your feelings. And that doesn't make it okay for other people to be bullies or mean or nasty or unkind or like all of those things. But your reactions to those things are yours, right? You're in charge of them. And sometimes that's really frustrating. And I think all of us get caught in that feeling of like, yeah, but you're doing this thing and it's making me so mad or it's making me so frustrated. And the reality is, yeah, the thing is making you
Yeah.
frustrated, but you're choosing to react in the way you're reacting. And that's a like gray area that's, I think, not on the fun side of the gray areas. It's a gray
Yes.
area where there's so much struggle, but also growth opportunity. So,
Yeah. And you know, one thing that, I have been thinking a lot about for myself is I have the tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt.
mm,
And what that means is I often don't allow, mm, I don't give myself the space to be angry with somebody or sad with
yeah,
sad because of their behavior.
right.
Because I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt and trying to say, well, they're doing the best they can, or this is what they were trying to do. And I understand that. But not recognizing the consequences of their actions hurt me. And I was thinking about this morning and realizing if I get to make my own choices, right? They have the agency to make their own choices too. And I think it's going to be a lesson that I didn't realize I was going to be learning during this process. And,
Yeah.
you know, one one important thing, you know, I think that is always important. We've talked about it a lot, not in this context, but like with Brene Brown, she'll when she's having a fight with her husband or something, or maybe she's having a fight in her head that her husband isn't involved in,
Right.
and she'll say, you know, the story I'm telling myself is that you're doing this. And I do think that that is a really important conversation to have with yourself right before you like jump on somebody. And I recently had that conversation with a friend about another friend where I said, you know, I was really hurt by her behavior. And I said, this is the story I'm telling myself. And I said, and I don't actually think it's true, but that's still just the story I'm telling myself. But at the same time, I do think we have to realize like we are all adults here. And just like we have agency and we get to write our own story, they get to write their own story too. Now, whether they choose to do it or not, and whether they're floating through life, not in a fun Fiero way, but just like in a not so fun way,
Yeah.
is not really up to us to decide or judge. You don't get a free pass if you're just floating through life.
No.
Like, that's not a get out of jail free card because you didn't think about things. Well, I didn't think about it that way. Well, okay. But, and so I have wondered what that was like to not think about things and just float.
Sounds amazing. But it's
Yeah.
also like how we got here. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, no. True
like
story.
culturally.
And yeah, and we are recording this before wherever here is that we got in February. But
Yeah, I don't even want to think
so
about
who
it yet.
knows? But
Um,
so I do think that my point is I am interested to hear where we what we learn when we're writing our own story about how it changes when we take ownership of our own story, how that changes our relationships with other people too. Because
yeah,
it changes our relationship with ourselves but I
Yep.
think it changes our relationship with other people too.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to boundary setting, right? Like your people will be your people, and your people who are not your people are going to fall away when you change your story that you're telling to yourself and about yourself and out
Yeah.
loud about yourself. I do want to caveat one thing I said, as you were talking, it made me think about this. Like, I don't think it's wrong to react in anger. Like, I don't think it's wrong for your reaction sometimes to be frustration. I think the part that is problematic is saying somebody else is making you be that way, because
Yes.
they're not. They're acting, you're reacting, and your reaction is what it is. Sometimes it makes sense for it to be anger, right? Like sometimes somebody does something and you're like, man, that makes me mad. And that's like totally normal human reaction. That's okay. Um, it's yours though, right? Like you own it. And that I just wanted to caveat that because I said it and then you were talking and it made me think, oh God, have I just told people that they're not allowed to get angry? Because
Well,
that's not the case at all.
I think part of it is you and I are very much in the world of kids,
Yeah.
and you and I like he does not make you mad. His behavior makes you mad, but he is not forcing you to hit him.
Right.
Like he did not do something that put in there's not some sort of chain event of events that triggered this series of events that then forced you to attack him.
Right. There's no
You were
like,
in control of your
yeah,
actions.
yeah, yeah.
And I think, I mean, because I am in the same world as you, I picked that up, but I appreciate
Well,
the
yeah, there are
clarification.
other folks who are maybe not in that world of trying to explain to an 8-year-old why it is actually his fault that he hit somebody.
Yeah.
Um, that is in fact his control area.
Um,
But yeah, no, I think that's right. All of that is true. I just don't want people listening and being like, wait a minute, they keep telling us to feel our anger, and now she's like, your feelings are your own fault. That's not, I'm not trying to be like that's a step beyond what I'm saying.
I mean, I would almost be like, I would feel like my kids took such a leap if they were like, I hit him because I wanted to. And I would be like, yes,
Or like I
yes,
was
you
angry
did.
and so I hit him,
Yeah.
right? Like,
I mean, I would feel like we were really making progress at
yeah,
that point.
connecting the emotion to the action would be
Yes.
fantastic. I
Yes.
agree.
If it
But we
wasn't like I
digress.
had to. He made me. I had to.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
That's
man.
I'm I don't know if you I have so many things to say about main character energy. I have two examples to talk about. I'm
I
so
just happen
excited.
to really like this phrase. I don't normally like fad sayings. Like we don't I think both of us kind of like get annoyed by them a lot of
Well,
times.
except for Riz, but yes.
Yeah, well, that is what it is. But I really like this idea of main character energy. And then I'm gonna step back and let you talk. You were about to say
Well,
something.
I mean, so your the definition it says to be the main character of your life means to actively take control of your narrative, right? And I mean, I don't know that we need a definition, but
No.
there are so I haven't yet talked about the year of yes this year because
I
this
mean
is
it's January 14th already, Tova.
yeah, I know. Um, but in the year of yes, which I haven't read yet either this year, but great book, highly recommend.
Mm.
Um, Shonda Rhimes, has committed to saying yes. Um, Now, just as a caveat, because we are huge fans of people saying no,
Hmm.
sometimes her yeses are actually no's, like
Right.
just to be clear. So you read the book, you'll understand. But like, there's a lot of boundary setting. And when she starts saying yes to herself, right? And yes to doing things and yes to putting herself out there, it means she's saying no sometimes to like friends who took advantage of her. And it means she's no longer like forever the bridesmaid in some of her friends' lives.
Right.
And suddenly those friends like don't want to hang out with her and like are very upset. And I picture her like taking this like main character energy and like the people like being like pushed back in my head. That's what's happening. So that's one thing. But once again, love The Year of Yes. I encourage anyone to read it who hasn't read it. It's a great reread. But the other thing is, and I haven't watched this movie yet this year, and it's January 14th. You're listening to this in February. I don't even know if I'll have watched it by February. I'm so behind on all my holiday movies. who knows? But the movie The Holiday, which is a fantastic movie for so many reasons. But in it, Kate Winslet plays this British character who is in love with a gentleman who is a schmuck. And she ends up befriending a older gentleman and they go out to dinner and he tells her something along the lines of that she is playing the is it I now I cannot this is one of my favorite lines in any movie ever and it's gone from my head and I am so upset. But basically she's not playing the leading lady in her own life, which may actually be the actual line. And she goes, "Oh my gosh, you're right. You should be the leading lady in your own life."
Yep.
And if you haven't watched that movie, watch it. It's delightful. I'm sure, I think for the most part, I mean, it certainly stands up better than Love Actually on like every front. Um, there are a few issues with it that come from any movie and from the aughts, but
Mm.
for the most part, it stands up. And but she then proceeds to watch movies where she watches leading ladies who have gumption. He recommends a bunch of old movies with leading ladies with gumption. But just this concept of, yes, you should be the leading lady of your own life. Like, that's it. That's
Yeah.
that's it. That's the story.
And I
And
think
by the
it's
way, when she realizes that, this guy is no longer attractive to her.
right, of course. Yeah.
Um, But that's kind of the moral of the season.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think it's really hard to do. I think because, especially as women, but men too, we get so bogged down in doing things, whether it's career, parenting, parenting up, parenting down, volunteering, being part of your community, all of these things. And none of them are bad or wrong, but you
Yeah.
get so caught up in the doing of things. And we talked about this all throughout the busyness season. You get caught up in all these things that you're doing that you don't even notice, like, am I passionate about this anymore? Do
Yeah.
I want to be doing this anymore? Do I love this? Is there something else I want to do instead? Right? Like, who is the who is the driving force? Who's the protagonist in your story? Is it all the other people or is it you? And I think we forget a lot of times to notice ourselves and our own needs. And that brings me to some important things, which I have here in our outline, important considerations about it. Being the main character, the protagonist, however you want to refer to it, is not selfish. It is not about being self centered. It doesn't mean you stop doing things for other people or that you stop doing all the things you love doing. It's a mindset, right? It's
Hmm.
who am I thinking of? Why am I doing this? And maybe I am volunteering at the soup kitchen because of an experience I had in my life and I want to give back and I want to be a part of this community and it causes me to feel good to be able to do this thing. But it's okay to notice that it causes you to feel good, right? Like it doesn't have to be um martyrdom, right? That's not the goal. The goal isn't to just like throw yourself on the fire and be the martyr of the story. The goal is to be the main character. And balancing things, right? Like you prioritize yourself, but that doesn't mean you neglect all these relationships you have in your life. You don't stop parenting your kids or talking to your parents. I mean, maybe you do, but that's probably for other reasons. Um, and you don't cut out all your friends, all those things. That's not what it's about. And I think it gets misconstrued because there's such like a moral value placed on altruism and a misconstruction of what altruism actually is. As I
Yeah.
just said, like altruism is not martyrdom. It is not giving up everything of yourself. That's not healthy or good for anyone at the end of the day. And I think it's important to recognize the difference between those things.
Yeah. And I think to me, the biggest thing is like figuring out how to do it your way,
Hmm.
right? Like figuring out how to parent your way that makes sense for you.
Ooh, that's hard.
Yeah, no, I haven't done that. I'm just saying like that's like what we're talking about.
Yeah, no. I agree. The only
Um,
saving grace for me is all the reels that are like, this is a gentle parent. This is me as a parent. And I'm always like, oh yeah, I'm on
yeah.
that. I'm on the wrong side. Oh no.
Yeah. And I think that, figuring out how, like, what makes sense for you, whether it's like figuring out how to volunteer if that's something you want to do, like if it's something you care about, figuring out what you care about and what you don't care about, like figuring out, like you said, priorities, and prioritizing yourself, but also just figuring out in general, like what you care about and just what you don't care about and what you're willing to accept if there is going to be ridicule. Like, I don't know if you get ridicule if you don't send out a Christmas card, because I like sending out Christmas cards. But I would imagine that there's a world that if you don't send out Christmas cards, there's annoying people who are like, "Oh my God, you didn't send out a Christmas card this year."
There's people who
Um,
take you off their lists, which is fine. Like
that's
you do
insane.
you.
But
That's
yeah,
cool. But yeah.
yeah, okay. So like, I'm not that person, so I didn't know that was the thing. But so like then, so if you're willing to like not be on someone's list because then you don't have the stress of sending your card out, then you're like, oh well, it's worth the trade for me. Like figuring those things out to get closer to who you are and to be a happier or more content, or just, I don't like any of those words, but like a more you version of you, because
Yeah.
that is going to be a happier version, and that is going to be a better mom or a better whatever you are version of you.
I think it's a more honest version of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, or the honest version of yourself. I don't know that you could be, I don't know about the more part. I'm very mired in words today. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
But I think being the most honest you can be about who you are and what's important to you and what you have time for. Like, would I love to send everybody I know a Christmas card? Yes. Do I want to wrangle my children into pictures? No. Do I want to have the stress of finding everyone's contact information and getting it into a spreadsheet and like I'm getting, oh, I'm like slinking down in my chair just thinking about it. So, it's a toss up, right? Like, or I guess that's not a toss up. It's what's most important to you. Where's the value? Like, I would rather put my time and energy to something that for me feels meaningful and for me feels like a, 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 a good use of my time, right? Because time
Right.
is limited. We have to take another quick break.
Yeah.
So why don't we do that? And when we come back, Toba, you can help us talk a little bit about mindset. I think we'll get into that a little bit. So we will be right back after this break, everyone.
Hey there, pod family. Have you ever wished you could stay in the loop with a little slice of transformation and inspiration delivered straight to your inbox? Well, you're in luck because now you can. Introducing our fantastic newsletter, your VIP pass to all things exciting and informative. Join our community of growth minded souls. Get the hottest topics delivered right to your inbox. It's quick, easy, and totally free. Just head over to our website at goboldlyinitiative.com and sign up for our newsletter today. Don't miss out on the next big thing. Stay connected with us. Subscribe now and get ready for some big, bold love.
Okay, so welcome back to the show. Before the break, I was talking a lot, and so I'm going to turn it over to Tova, but we're going to talk about the importance of mindset and how mindset plays such a big role in being the author of your own story. And I would actually argue, putting my lawyer brain on, I would argue that being the author of your own story is a mindset, like in and of itself.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my son, my oldest, the other day, and we were talking about somebody who has gotten more rigid and judgmental as they aged. And I said, listen, that is the default setting. It is just easier for that to happen. Because what happens is you collect life experiences. And what life experiences do is they help you when you meet somebody or something happens to be like, oh, I've experienced this before. And when I've experienced this is before, this is what happened. And so the easy thing to do is to be like, I bet that will happen again. Like it's just, it makes sense that will happen again. And that will be easy for me to understand. And I said, so it makes sense that when people get older, it's an easy to be more judgmental and rigid. I said, if you don't want to be that way, it takes work. You have to actively try to not be judgmental. And it doesn't always work like but I said, but I think just the action of trying to not be judgmental and being like, okay, I've had this experience before, but I don't know what's going to happen this time because this time has never actually happened before. So we'll see. I said that, that in it of itself can lead to more of a keeping your mind open. And I said it also can be looking for different experiences and new experiences and things that you haven't experienced before, and even just reading books outside of your experiences. But I think that, um, our kids are living in a world where the growth mindset is their default. And hopefully that means that even as they get older, it won't be a default for them to grow more judgmental and more fixed
Yeah.
in their belief structure. And so I think that, as you said, I think being wanting to write your own story, and being continually focused on making choices to choose what path you're taking and being that main character in your own life in itself is a mindset. Because if you are trying to do that, you are more likely to go out and want to learn
Yeah.
and be more resilient. And you're more likely to both set goals, but also achieve those goals and not give up and to just keep going, to have more grit and, all of those things that they say that you need to do to just, I don't know, stay young to a certain extent and
Yeah. To stay
young at heart.
flexible in your thinking and your behaviors, I think is really at the root of what we're talking about. And um, it's important to think about how you can structure your support systems and your kind of day-to-day life to be more supportive of the idea of a growth mindset, right? Like I have a group of friends and they haven't changed too much over the last 10 years. Like I've added some people have fallen out. But it's not like massive overhaul, right? It's not a
Right.
complete changeover. And yet we all try different things. We all bring new things to the group. We all read different kinds of books or go to different vacation places, all kinds of things, and then bring that back to the group and share. And it's not like we sit around and like pass the talking stick, but like, you know what I mean? Like, if you have a group of friends who are also out there living life and like experiencing different things and trying new things, it is going to impact the way that you view the world and it will help you with this kind of growth mindset. It's one of the many reasons that the women's circle is so great because that kind of creates a built-in group for you that is doing those kinds of things. Um, let's talk a little bit about kind of how you write your own story. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of all of this in the next few episodes of the show. But just to like outline it so you know what to expect. I think there's some very obvious tools for writing your own story: journaling, vision boards, meditation, affirmations, all the things we talk about all the time. But, I think also are very like, yeah, if you're going to write your own story, maybe journal about it. Like, literally write it down.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know why I just raised my hand, but I just raised my hand.
yes, Tova.
Yes. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw it. If you're not watching on YouTube, check us out on YouTube. You can watch me raise my hand. Um, we have a newsletter. If you're not subscribed to it, check it out. But every week on Sundays, we send out a moment of pause, sort of a bunch of questions or a question of the week where we make suggestions of things that you could journal about. And the next few weeks, months even, are going to be focused on questions that can help you with this whole writing your own story concept. So I will now let you proceed, but just in case you're like, hey, what would I
Yeah.
even write about? We got you.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And you can find it on our social media and stuff too. It's like it's a great way to get started in your journey, continue your journey. It's like any entry point sort of activity. We also have a personal mission statement course which allows you to create a vision board, which can be very helpful in this conversation. Um Beyond that, we've talked about this a little bit in the beginning of the episode, but reframing your past.
Yeah.
And I like looking at it as a reframing, right? Because that's about perspective, not about pretending something didn't happen when it did or vice versa. It's not changing the facts of things, it's changing your perspective and using your current lived experience to reframe whatever past actions happened so that you can move beyond those things. You can incorporate those things. You can do whatever you need to do in order to make your past something that helps you be the person you want to be instead of hinders you.
And
Um,
what I'll just say to that real fast is because I've had this experience, sometimes you go back and you look at your past and you realize that something that happened was a much bigger deal than you realized it was. And you were like, oh, that's why I always feel this way.
yeah.
And that's not a bad thing that suddenly something seems bigger than it was because suddenly a lot more makes sense. And it can be freeing. I mean, you know me, I love reasons. I'm like, oh, now it all makes sense. But I just want to highlight, sometimes you look back and you're like, oh, that wasn't as big of a reason. Or the person who I've been angry about, isn't the person I should be angry at. Or I've been shaming myself and I think a lot of times we carry shame
Hmm.
and because you're judging yourself with your 11-year-old eyes. And when you look at yourself with your 43-year-old eyes, you're like, of course I didn't know that. Like, of
Yeah.
course I said that. What else was I supposed to do? Whatever the case might be, sometimes things will be smaller, sometimes things will be bigger, but reframing it can, like you said, it can help you serve you and help you. I don't know, move past it and let go isn't at all the right word, but incorporate it into
Yeah.
who you are in a healthier way.
Yeah. And I think, we both understand that trauma is hard and that there are levels of trauma that differ from like, oh, this unhappy thing happened in my life. There are some severe traumatic experiences that will impact you for the rest of your life. And we're not trying to minimize that or suggest otherwise. The idea really is to be able to look back at those things and if necessary with a therapist or a licensed professional to help you look back at those things in a way that is healing for you as opposed to re-traumatizing. I think that's
Mhm.
very important to recognize because we can re-traumatize ourselves by going over and over something. It can be re-traumatizing and you want to be cautious about that. um so how do you get better at doing this? I think, it goes back to a lot of the stuff we talked about in the beginning, but really critical thinking, question your values and beliefs, question why you think something is a certain way or why you have a certain value or why you feel a certain way about somebody, right? Question those things. And maybe it's true. Maybe if that is your values, maybe those are your beliefs and that's great. But maybe they're not. Maybe it's like, this is what I heard growing up. And so I just incorporated it. But really, like, my lived experience doesn't show me that that's true. And so maybe I
Yeah.
can change my belief about that. Hang out with diverse people, taking responsibility, be the person in charge of yourself instead of looking for external validation or external, like somebody to give you a cookie for whatever it is that you've done, right? Like be the person who is responsible for your actions and owns them and is like, yeah, I made a mistake, or yeah, I made the right choice, or whatever, but it's you in the driver's seat, and it's okay to own that. I think whether it's good, bad, or neutral, it's okay to own it. um so that's a lot of information. I'm going to wrap us up because I think there's a lot more in my outline, but we're going into all of this
Yeah.
week by week for the next few weeks. And I think we'll get more into the details of it as we go. I do want to give you guys some homework. And really, it's just to go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter, which is self-serving and yet also serves you because it's full of good content. Tova is our newsletter mastermind and gets it out to you guys, which I appreciate greatly. And as she said, there are going to be, I'm going to call them journal prompts, even though I know people don't like that term. There are going to be journal prompts every week that help you start this process. And so your homework is just to sign up and start reading those and hopefully start doing them. But like step one is sign up. And we'll put the link in the show notes and in our social media and all of that, for you to find pretty easily. When you do sign up, let us know on social media. Go ahead and find us at Go Boldly Together. Share whatever it is that you took away from this episode, what you think, is coming up for you in your story. We want to hear it all. So go ahead and share that with us on social media. And then finally, we would love your support. We work hard on this podcast every week, and we love to provide as much content as possible. And if you could go ahead and rate our show on either, oh my goodness, on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you find us, and leave us a comment. We would love to know you're out there and listening and what your thoughts are about the show. So I think that's it for this week, Tova, unless you have something.
No, we are just really excited to be back.
Yeah. Yes. Very excited to be back. And with that, we'll be back next week with another episode on writing your own story. So have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.